Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Mac Trains. My intention today is it's been on my mind for a while, to give a kind of an overview and a summary of existing stock, what's out there, how does it rank compared to other items of TT120. Some folk are determined to compare TT120 to 00, to N. I think that misses the point. What we want to start getting a sense of is, where does this item of TT120 rolling stock compare to another item? Should I get this loco or that loco? Which one's best value? What will it do for me? What am I looking for? So to try to foster that and get us closer to that a little bit, I put together a mini league table. Now, I am limited here. Caveat before we begin, I can only work with what I know. And I don't have everything. I don't have the bank balance to get everything. So I can tell you what I've got. I can give you some perhaps general steer as to what people have found other things to be, but I can't speak from experience on these things. So with that said, I'm going to begin with the locos, move on to the rolling stock, the freight, and then the passenger rolling stock. So let's see how we start. I'm going to begin with, well, what was my first TT120 loco, which was the Class 08. A lot of folk had the William Whitelaw from the sets to begin with, but I didn't get a set. My first venture into TT120 was the little Class 08, and it was DC, still no HM7000 chip for them, so it was DC, and I was very impressed with it, I have to say, as it came out. Trying to get some sort of objectivity into this now and remove my own eagerness and enthusiasm and excitement when this all started coming through. I'll attempt to do that. So, objectively, what did I think of the Class 08 in terms of value at the time? When I got it, yeah, I was quite happy with it. I didn't feel I got ripped off. It wasn't a bargain. I didn't get it in the super early pre-order pricing, but I paid it, I think, just £100 and something for it, low hundreds. And I was quite content to pay that. I felt I wasn't getting taken advantage of, and so I'm going to give it a 6 for value. And again, I think that's trying to give myself a middle of the road starting point deliberately, so I have room to go up and down from that. It would have to be exceptional to get a 10. It'd have to be terrible value for money to get a 1. So let's just work on a 6. It's at a 10. I should say that just now. So detail, again, this was my first item of TT120. I had an older Bachmann 08 to compare, and I felt the detail was very, very good given the scale. Certainly you could notice some differences, but I'm going to give it a 7 for detail. Quite impressed with what they managed to get into the Class 08. As far as quality goes, again, I had really no complaints. Some folk have had difficulties, perhaps with motors and things later, but at that time, no problem at all. I'm going to give it a solid 7 for quality. Running, I remember when they began to show us these samples and so on beforehand, and Hornby's own videos they put out through YouTube and elsewhere, and I was astonished to see it running smoothly over what were rather, to me, looking like rather large plastic Insulfrog points, and asking that particular question, and it was certainly one that was impressive to see. In my experience, the DC running was more limited. It was more prone to cutting out. I didn't feel I had a great low down speed control, and a shunter really should have. I didn't think the gearing was quite right, or it could have done with the flywheel to carry it over some dead points, so I'm going to give it a 6 for running. And that gives us an overall of the Class 08 for a 6.5. So that's on DC. Some of you may know I have now changed it to DCC running HM7000. I've managed to shoehorn a chip in there. But that's as it was, as I got it. Certainly the running would be improved substantially with the addition of DCC and a Stay Alive. I have no problems with running anymore, but at that point, that's what it was. So it's out of the box, 6 out of 10. So overall, 6.5. My next loco was the Nighthawk and I was absolutely blown away by Nighthawk. When I got it, it was and remains, to me at that point, that was the best loco I'd ever had at that stage. Hadn't bought a lot of new locos for quite some time. I'm well aware if I've been keeping up with more recent double O's, that might not be the case, but at that point, Nighthawk was a dream. Value, I would give it a 7 out of 10. I think you get quite a lot for your money, more so than the Class 08, certainly by comparative terms of just the sheer amount of loco you get for the price. So I'm improving it on that. Detail, again, I would take an improvement of 7.5. Quality, I would say that the 08 maybe felt a little bit light in the hand, whereas I didn't think Nighthawk did. So that's a 7.5 for me. And running also, to me the Nighthawk was smoother. Now I was moved on to DCC. This was an HM7000 chipped loco. No stay alive, none required, with plenty of pickups. So a solid 7.5 running. Again, not the very best at the low down speeds, but it wasn't a problem. So overall, that gives me a 7.375 for precision, but 7.4 we might say thereabouts for Nighthawk. Next loco was the Class 50, and definitely an uptick in many ways. The value here, I'm going to give it a 7 again. Again, I would say it's better value than the 08. It wasn't a bargain. I wasn't getting ripped off. I'm not complaining. 7 out of 10. Detail here, though, jumps up to a 9. There's a noted improvement, I would say, in what they attempted in the ambition of the designers in the Class 50, would be what I would say. And that reflects not only in the detail, but in the quality. The weight, the density of the model when you pick it up in your hand is quite remarkable. So that's a solid 9 for quality as well as detail. And again, this is a DCC HM7000 chipped loco. I cannot fault the running, nor the pulling power. This is a phenomenal loco. Some folk I know have had difficulty, so whether quality or running, they've had some of the cardan shafts pop out. I haven't, so I can't put that in. Not that I'm doubting anyone else's experience at all. I'm sure that's the case, but I haven't yet, so to me it's really faultless. So I'm actually going to give that a 10. I do like my 50. So that jumps the 50 up to an 8.75. The next loco actually I got was the William Whitelaw, and I got it as part of one of the deals for the Easterner set. And so as part of that set, I think I paid £154. So the value there is the best value of anything I've bought in TT, because I got a whole set to go with it. So that's a 9 out of 10. In fact, I bought the set and sold a fair bit of it afterwards because I didn't need that much of it. I just kept the bits I wanted and made most of my money back that way, and still got to keep a few things effectively for free. So William Whitelaw, 9 out of 10 and value. Detail, well, it's a 7.5 again. Quality, I would say, maybe it was just impression. Maybe it's because I by then had the 50, but to me, my impression of the quality of William Whitelaw wasn't so good, perhaps, as Nighthawk. And so I'm dropping that to a 6.5. And running, likewise, it actually, again, Nighthawk now was DCC when I got it out of the box. William Whitelaw's DC. So it's back down to slightly poorer running with that 3-pole motor. So it's a 6.5. So unintentionally, but that's how these things work, that gives William Whitelaw 7.375, which is actually identical to Nighthawk, which I suppose is what it should be, but they were arrived at slightly differently. The value of William Whitelaw was better. I felt the quality and running of Nighthawk was better. So one cancels out the other and I end up at exactly the same overall score. And then I got myself a 43, the HST pack. And given that you get the 2 in the pack, I think the value here is not at the level of the bargain of the whole Easterner set for William Whitelaw, but it's a 7.5, very good value. I'm not going to complain at that. The detail here was again to me a substantial step up from the Class 08. But I would say, yeah, the 50 still beats it to me. So it's a 7.5 for detail. No difficulty with the quality. That's a solid 8. Again, particularly the driving car. That's a weighty piece of machinery. and so I'm giving that an 8 for quality. And the running, it's not up to my 50. The HST is HM7000, I should say, but it's not up to the 50. It's not as strong a puller. You wouldn't expect it to be either, probably. It's not quite as heavy, but it's a good runner. So I'm giving that an 8 as well. So that's an overall 7.75 for the 43. Right, moving on to the freight. I'll try to move through these a wee bit faster. But the 7 planks were where I think most of us started for these things. So a value, again, no complaints with it. It's not a bargain, but it's perfectly sensible. 7 out of 10. Detail, I think the detail is excellent. And so to me, the detail there is 8. The quality of the 7 planks, they do exactly what you want. They couple beautifully. They run beautifully. That's an 8. So an 8 for the running as well. And that gives an overall 7 plank, Hornby 7 plank, 7.75. Then next, if we take the Peco 7 plank for our direct comparison, now the value of the Peco is simply better. It's notably cheaper. So that's an 8.5. The detail is slightly poorer, but not substantially so I'm giving it 7. To me, the quality is likewise overall excellent, but the running of the Peco ones was affected by poorer couplings, so that's just a 6. So they gave an overall of 7.375. With the new couplings, which are just out, and I've had a chance to look at them, I would bump the running up by 2 points, so give it a 7.875 overall with a new coupling. So that would take it slightly above, in fact, the Hornby 7 plank. But it's there or thereabouts. They're very similar in many ways. The vent van, I like the wee vent van. It maybe gets overlooked a bit, but value 7, detail 7, quality 8, running 9. It has given me no difficulties at any point, so that's a 7.75 overall. The brake van, I've got a real affection for the brake van. I like it. There's something about it that appeals, and yet it is flawed. The value here is not so good, 6.5. Detail's excellent, an 8. The quality overall is very good, except for the running. The running is down to 4. It's a poor runner, my one anyway. It's as though they're deliberately applying the brakes on the brake van. It just doesn't roll. So that takes it right down to a 6.375, and I am hoping that they update that as they've done with the tankers. I'll also come to the 12-ton tankers. And they're very charming models. The value here, again, I think you get quite a lot, so a 7. Detail and quality, 8, no difficulty. Running, however, is down to 5. Maybe not quite as... I've scored it slightly higher in the brake fan because it was more hit and miss. Some of them worked much better. Some of them did not. So, but a lot of them were quite poor, so that's a 5. Overall, 7. Solid 7. If I was to give it now for the new versions out, new liveries are a matter of taste, but the running is now noticeably improved. And so I'll be able to give that a substantially higher score. So it would actually, running would now be up to a 9 rather than a 5, which would give it an overall 8 rather than a 7. But it is what it is. The TT120 tankers, value here I think is excellent for what you get, 8.5. Possibly one of the best value things out there just now for TT120. Detail, it still blows your mind to look at the detail, particularly the underframe, 9. Quality, 9. Nothing to complain about here. This model, given how much detail I put into it, doesn't sacrifice quality to get it. And the running isn't affected even. That's also a solid 9. It does exactly what you want. So it's a very high score, an 8.875 overall for the tanker TTA. Then the 21-ton wagons. These are perhaps the unsung heroes. They're simple. They're not trying to be anything more than they are. But you get good value, good size. So 8.5 for value, 7 for detail. It's simpler, but it's none the worse for that. And people have shown you can really weather these up beautifully. Quality, nothing wrong with these things at all. They do what they're meant to do. 8. Running, again, nothing to quibble about. 8. So that's a very high score. 7.875, and the value there really helps drive that up. What about the hoppers, the HAA hoppers? I have mixed feelings on these ones. I think the value here is less good, so I've only put that down as 6.5. The detail's certainly perfect is there, a 7.5 in the detail. The quality, I'm giving that a 7. Maybe it's just my eyes, but the frame, as it were, of the hopper, the yellow or the red, it just looks too toy-like and plasticky. That may be just me, but I look at it and it doesn't quite hit the mark. You know, I've looked at pictures of that colour and it, on the real things, as it were, and that to me lets the model down. It makes it look unnecessarily toy-like. So I have penalised it somewhat there. They run perfectly well, so it's a 7.25 overall. Moving on to the coaches now, I have really little clue about the coaches. I confess it's not my area, but for what it's worth, here's the opinion of the limited coaching stock I have, which is Mark 1s, Mark 3s. The value of the Mark 1s I think is very good. I think when you compare it to what you pay for freight, you're getting a lot for your money. So I'm not complaining. If I'm not complaining about the freight, I can't complain about the coaches either. So 8.5 for value. Detail, it's great. And, you know, add a few people into the coaches was not hard to do. They really come up nicely. That's, again, an 8. Quality of the Mark 1s, 7. They are very lightweight. They are somewhat when you take them apart, the running board, the base of it is very flimsy. There's not a lot there. So I'm giving it a 7 for quality. Running, again, a 7. Some folk did have issues with how they ran. They tended to scrape on corners, on bends rather. So I'm giving it a 7. I haven't had great difficulty with that at all, but it is there. That's a 7.625 overall. And then the Mark 3s. To me, the Mark 3s are bigger again, so they're for better value, so I'm going to give them a 9. The detail, it is a simpler model in some ways overall. The livery is very nicely applied, but in terms of the actual detail, 7.5. Quality, though, as I say, livery is perfectly applied. You can't complain, that's a solid 8. They run well, that's a solid 8. That's an 8.125 overall. Right then, so where does that leave us? Well, it gives a little bit of a league table. Now, as I mentioned, budget doesn't stretch to everything, so that the Duchesses are not in my league table of locos, for example. They, by all accounts, will be very high up if they were, but I haven't handled them, I haven't got that familiarity, so bear that in mind. I'm going to start at the bottom. And the bottom is the Class 08. It's a simpler loco. It was an early loco. I think there's less ambition in the Class 08. And there is the frustration of it not having HM7000 compatibility, not properly, without paying substantially for that with a specialist like TMC. So that's a 6.5. Next up, as I say, William Whitelaw, Nighthawk, the same basic chassis arrangement, came out exactly the same. 7.375. William Whitelaw scored higher for value. Nighthawk, to me, is a better runner and a better detailed and probably slightly better quality model. But there's not much in it, and they came out exactly the same to show, as I was to prove my point. The 43 HST, excellent model. That, if I didn't have a 50, I would be raving about it even more. There's something very appealing about a 43 with a rake sweeping past. It's one of my earliest memories of a neighbour's model railway, and this dad had this phenomenal setup, and the HSTs were in full tilt. So 43s, and then the 50 at the top, I have to say, it's head and shoulders still to me. Again, haven't got a Duchess, but to me the 50 is an 8.75 worthy of its place. Now what about the freight? Well, start at the bottom again. To me the brake fan, 6.375, and it's charming, but it's flawed. 12-ton tankers are at 7. That would be a 7.5 with a revised running on the tanker, but at 7 with what's mostly out there. The hoppers, 7.25. Peco 7 plank, 7.375. Again, that'll be revised upwards to 7.8 if you get the newer version with the better couplings. Then the vent van and the 7 planks are tied in third place for 7.75. 21-ton wagons, Possibly one of the simplest of all, but there's a charm and there's an honesty 7.875. The TTA's clearly the best freight that's come out yet, 8.875. The coaches, for what it's worth, I've got the Mark 1s at 7.6 and the Mark 3s at 8.1. There's not much between them. Obviously, that purely depends what era you're looking for. So in a way, the comparison there maybe is less relevant to most modelers. You'll get what you need to get, and that's that. So there we have it. I hope to keep this updated every so often. But I hope you found that interesting, and thank you very much for listening, watching. And we hope that there's new stuff to be heard of soon. It'd be great if there was. It'd be great to get even the pre-orders up for some of the stuff they have told us is coming, like the 37s. And who knows what else is out there. So yeah, keep watching. As soon as there's anything to hear, I'll try and let you know. Thanks very much for your support. And thank you to those who comment and subscribe. Please continue to do so. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.